You've been listening to the True Idaho News Podcast. Unfiltered news and opinion for the citizens of Idaho. Get more True News by visiting trueidahonews.com. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit trueidahonews.com/support. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Shane Klaas here with True Idaho News, and today we have Representative David Leavitt out of the Magic Valley. He's in Twin Falls, and David Leavitt has an interesting Substack. If you're not already subscribed to it, you ought to go over there to Substack and subscribe to it, because today we're going to be sharing a lot of information out of one that he did this last week. And I don't know where he finds the time to be a representative, to have a Substack, and to do jury duty all at the same time, and then still fit in his busy schedule coming on here. How you doing, David?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Shane.
Oh, yeah, jury duty, man. I haven't had to do that one yet.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I mean, spent a day with the prosecuting attorney as well as the defendant, and it was an interesting case, and learned a lot in the process of how they deliberate, how they go through things, and yeah, it was a really good learning experience. It was a tough day because you know, something like that is our civic duty to do. And it is our civic duty to go and participate in that. And I would encourage people to participate in it, even though it seems like one of those negative things, just like, I have to do this. It's part of our civic obligation to our fellow citizens. And it is not easy to get on jury duty and look at what's going on with the situation, because, there's a lot of emotion involved. But,
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, you have to look at all the evidence and determine whether or not a person's innocent or guilty, or I shouldn't say determine if they're innocent, because they are innocent until proven guilty, but
Yeah.
determine their guilt. And, you know, even the narrow scope that they place on what you're looking at as far as innocence goes, and determining if they are guilty, uh, it's very narrow in those
Yeah.
aspects. And sometimes it's not just a thin cut and dry thing.
It's
Takes a lot of
probably a
deliberation.
it's probably a good process to go through as a legislator.
Hmm.
I've always kind of maintained, anytime that and people don't think about this, but they think, oh, I want this to be law, and I wish this was a law, and I wish this was a
Hmm.
law, and you have to think of it in the harshest of circumstances. You have to think, do I want this to be a law bad enough? Is it important enough that we're willing to use the full force of law, which could mean in extreme circumstances, uh, you get shot? Is it important enough that we're willing to put a person in a situation where we're willing to kill them over this? Because let's say that you decide not to follow a certain law, and the police show up, and then you tell the police, well, I'm not going to abide by that simply because you're here. And they say, well, then we're going to place you under arrest. And I don't think you ought to arrest me because I don't think that's constitutional. And they say, well, we're going to arrest you anyway.
Hmm.
And it could lead all the way down the line where we are willing to use the full force of the police department to enforce a law. So is it really that important to us to write that into the law books? And so I think it's a good process to go through, and I think it's good for our representatives to go through that. I've never served on jury duty. I was called in for it one time, but I happened to be I had just moved out of the state, and they didn't know it yet, and they called me to jury duty. And I said, "Well, that's going to be really tough for me to attend." And they said, "We'll let you out." so,
Yeah.
so I was younger, but at that point in my life, and so I always thought it would be interesting to serve on jury duty. Not that I'm looking to do it anytime soon, but if I got called,
Yeah.
I'd
Well,
certainly
and
be interested.
I mean, it is very interesting simply because you are determining if somebody is guilty of a crime. And when you can make that judgment, because really it's like the jury is the judge, not the judge of the court, but they're the judge determining the guilt of
Yeah,
that individual if they are convicted. And it's tough because you're taking that person's rights and that person's liberties away. You're really restricting them. And so it is a very tough thing to do. And,
Yeah.
I mean, being a legislator is tough as well, but being on a jury like that, knowing that you're looking at an individual to determine whether or not they're guilty of a crime
Yeah.
it's a tough thing. It's a tough task. It's not easy. But I would encourage people to get
Yeah.
involved in actually, when they get called up to participate in that, even though it doesn't pay well. It's $10
No.
a day,
So,
$5 for a half day. But yeah,
oh boy. So, kind of moving forward into you are our representative. You just came out of a wild and crazy session. Is there was there anything that was kind of a highlight to you before we move into today's topic that you just thought was really interesting, or that you were happy about, sad about? Kind of walk us through that.
I'd have to say that being in the legislature is almost like being in a bipolar relationship. You have your ups and your downs. So, I mean, there's a lot of days where things just were spectacular. They were phenomenal. The people that I worked with, I mean, uh, Senator Zeiderveld, Senator Zito, Senator Cole, um, Faye Thompson, Lucas Kaler, Kent Marmon, Clint Hostetler. All these people are just spectacular individuals. I mean, Maria Nate, she was spectacular. And then there's a lot of other legislators too. I mean, it's like you look at Representative Chris Bruce; he was phenomenal as well. So a lot of great people to work with there, but there was also a lot of frustrations because you want to see things happen for the citizens. You want to work for the citizens, but it takes a corroborated effort and takes a lot of negotiations, if you will, to talk with other legislators, try getting things through. And and it's very fulfilling, but like I said, it's very frustrating too. I had one bill that I brought forward that I thought was going to be a spectacular bill, and people were asking me about it. What's the status of this bill? We want to support this bill, and this bill dealt with charter schools. Um, and I was so excited about this bill, but then I found out some information thanks to Representative Wisniewski. We talked at length about this bill, and he's like, "There's unintended consequences. We just don't know what they are." So we kept on
Mm.
asking and asking, and couldn't get any answers as far as the unintended consequences, other than that they were minimal. And come to find out, I received some information right before we were getting ready to vote on that bill, and it was very, very um, compelling argument not to bring the bill forward.
Mm.
And so I had to kill up my own bill.
Wow.
And I called up Representative Wisniewski on the phone, and I was like, "You were right. Thank you for that." Because, you put your heart into something, you're passionate about something, and, you don't want to see it die. You want to see it succeed. But due to unintended consequences, sometimes you have to let something die that you love.
That's interesting, and this is one of the reasons that just wanted you on my show here, because as I've gotten to know you through MVLA way back when, and then uh, through the process of just this, kind of digging more, digging deeper. One thing I've learned about David, everybody that's watching this right now, is that requires character. That requires a lot of character when you can put your pride in your back pocket and you say, you know what, I was going to bring this forward, and then come on my show, and that's the one thing that you brought up. I think is very commendable, and it's just it shows your character, and thank you for that. We need more legislators that are willing to put their pride in the back pocket. I think that's the one thing that destroys public servants the most, is once they move into a position of power. And I've experienced that even doing what I do. But way back with Shane Talks Politics, you realize that you can move the needle, and when you realize you can move the needle, then suddenly you want to move it more, and it can take you in the wrong direction. And I needed to take a step back for a little while, and I really attribute it to, I had to get my heart right with God before I could come back and do this again, and realize that there is it takes a lot more strength than I think any one person has to be a legislator. It takes a moral code. It takes a paradigm that I don't think a lot are qualified for. They go in with the right idea, but pretty soon pride gets in the way, and you might push a bill forward just because you're embarrassed that you thought of it to begin with. And so I'm glad you brought that up, and thank you for having that kind of character, because we need those are the type of people that should be sitting up there at the Capitol, not the folks that just want to maintain their power and stay in power. Um, so you had an interesting Substack this week talking about Idaho's power bills, and it was right on the heels of I did a show on Wednesday. I know you've had a busy week and you haven't had a chance to watch it, but I did a show on Wednesday that was just uncovering some of the corruption and the power in the state of Idaho that people don't realize just how much of it goes on. And so as we were kind of moving into what topic to talk about this week, you were already booked for the show. I asked you to really talk about this one quite a bit and to dive in a little bit deeper. So would you kind of introduce the viewers to that Substack and to the topic? And I've got some slides I brought up for you, and let's just kind of make our way through that. So
Mhm.
let's go there.
Yeah, I wrote a Substack called "Why Idahoans Are Paying More for Their Power Bills." Energy has been one of those things. It's been I've been rather passionate about this session. I've worked with Democrat Representative John Gannon on several different pieces of legislation to try addressing it. A lot of it stems from Lava Ridge. People have been very passionate about Lava Ridge. We've tried stopping it left and right. There's been several resolutions in regard to stopping Lava Ridge. It's been on the forefront. So many people, and this kind of ties into it because I've learned a lot from Representative Gannon. He started talking to me about CAISO, and what CAISO is. It's the California Independent Operators, and it's a nonprofit benefit corporation that manages the flow of electricity across approximately 80% of California's power grid, and also part of Nevada. And it's one of the largest transmission organizations in the United States. And that ties directly into the Western energy imbalance market. And Shane's pulled up kind of the map, just to kind of give you an idea. What it is, it's an exchange of power where the different states have come into cooperation with one another to sell power back and forth. It's similar to like a stock exchange, but for energy. And they try doing it in real time. And what got me thinking is that people have contacted me about their power bills and they've been upset about the increase they've seen in their power bills. And so I started digging into it some more and came to the realization after several meetings in the legislature. I went to an energy caucus hearing. And in that hearing, they brought up basically like some spreadsheets in regards to the power and where the power is being produced. And they were talking about how solar and wind are the cheapest sources of power. And but it's not the residential, it's the commercial. And so there's a lot of questions in regard to that. It's like, well, is it really the cheapest form of power? And they're like, it is. And then we start asking, well, what about the subsidies? If they didn't have the subsidies, would it be the cheapest form of power? It's not. And so, which really got me thinking, because there's so many facets to our energy grid where um, the Public Utility Commission, they play an intricate role in all this. And the way that our current system works is that Idaho Power goes out and spends the money for their infrastructure. They have to recoup that money somehow. And so what they do is they go back to the Public Utilities Commission with receipts and say, this is how much money we've spent on this infrastructure. We need to recoup that money. And then the Public Utility Commission is able to go and determine whether or not there's justification for recouping that money. That's where we see a lot of our pay increases, or excuse me, our rate increases for energy costs is because of the infrastructure. And then you tie this back to the whole aspect of, well, as far as the energy exchange goes, in order for Idaho to sell energy to California, Washington, or Oregon, they have all adopted a carbon neutral metric. And with that carbon neutral metric, the only way they'll take Idaho energy is if it's carbon neutral. And so this leads me back to the whole aspect that we have utility companies that are investing all this money into these carbon neutral energy projects so they can sell to these other states. And so, really, by proxy, these states that have adopted these carbon neutral pieces of legislation are pushing this legislation on Idahoans. And, the citizens get to pay for a lot of this.
So let me make sure I
Hmm.
just understand right. So because we're a part of this exchange, we have to sell them power, or can Idaho Power just say, no, we're not going to sell you power?
I'm not sure, but they're all intrinsically connected. If you look at like the Southwest Intertie project, all that goes to the what is it um, substation in Jerome, and you look at how that basically it's taking power, sending it down to basically Las Vegas and across in California, and then you have the overland power lines, which are coming out of Wyoming. And this is to go and intertie everything so this exchange happens across multiple states. Because you look at the energy needs for Idaho, and we're at the breaking point, really, as far as the amount of energy that we're able to go and produce at this point. And so we do import a lot of energy from these other states as well, but we also export a lot of energy. And so it becomes this like entity of its own as far as like the way the power works and the exchange of the power. And so we have to have like this balance as far as the energy needs, because you look at what's happening. We have uh, Diode, which is talking about putting in a data center. We have Meta, which is building a massive facility. It's going to be probably one of Idaho Power's largest customers. And we have Micron, which is expanding. Excuse me. And so there's a lot of need for power, and we're going to have a tremendous shortfall unless we come up with some way to go and make up that difference. And so that's kind of where the exchange comes from. You look at the industries in Oregon and California and Washington State, a lot of them are power intensive as well. And with that carbon neutral metric they need that power. And well, Idaho, we have some of the least regulations, which makes us into prime areas to be able to put in a lot of this green infrastructure. But it's nothing that the citizens have voted for. It's nothing that the legislature has supported. It's just kind of been opposed on or pushed on us, and we're pushing back.
So this ties back to that Lava Ridge wind project. So they're building these because the only way that they can sell power to California, Oregon, through the rest of this CAISO Western Energy Imbalance Market, if I'm understanding what you're saying, is the only way that we can sell Idaho Power can sell energy to them is if we meet certain carbon neutral metrics, which means we have to have solar and we have to have wind in order to sell it. But so they build it so they can sell it and they can profit off of it, but then they turn around and they raise the power rates on Idahoans in order to fund it.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
where's the
there's
benefit to
other
us?
right. Well, I mean, there's other metrics too, because I imagine there's grants and whatnot that they
Okay.
use, but there is that burden that does fall back on the ratepayers. And for me, we subsidize so many different industries as the ratepayers as taxpayers. We subsidize so many industries, and there needs to be more done to go and protect the ratepayers. There needs to be more to go and protect us from seeing these inflated prices.
Yeah, I would
Idaho's
agree.
always had really inexpensive energy, clean energy. I mean, we have some of the most cleanest energy in the nation. I mean, look at hydroelectric. Hydroelectric is absolutely efficient. It's clean. And this last year, I'm actually pretty excited about this, but I was able to go and support Senate Joint Memorial 101, which was basically telling the federal government, you guys need to relook at rebuilding the Teton Dam because it addresses two issues. First issue is water, and because water's been in a short commodity and everybody needs water, Teton Dam would be able to go facilitate with some of the recharge efforts as well as water storage and capacity But I think the other aspect of that is looking at rebuilding the Teton Dam as a hydroelectric dam, which could offset some of our energy needs. And so, it's one of those things we've been looking at. But Idaho Power and these other utility companies, Rocky Mountain Energy, they have not, and from what I've seen, uh, looked into the possibility for infrastructure as far as hydroelectric goes. I mean, hydroelectric is a huge battery in essence.
Yeah. Well, but then we have Simpson that's trying to tear down dams. And I mean, there's
Yeah.
4 of them that he wants to breach for the salmon. But I find it very interesting that at the same time he was going around, I think he's kind of backed off a little bit on that. I think he found out how
Mhm.
unpopular that was with Idahoans. But at the time that he brought this up, he came to Twin Falls County, to the commissioner's office over there, and was talking to everybody. And uh, and and as he was talking, he starts talking about his friendship with Bill Gates. And as we tie
Mhm.
this back, Gates was wanting to put a nuke lab over there by INL to create
Mhm.
energy. So I find it really interesting that he wants to breach dams that create energy, and yet he's buddy with a guy that's wanting to come in and put in a nuke lab. Now I don't know if
Mhm.
how related that is, but if it smells like a fish, looks like a fish, it's probably a fish.
Yeah, I
So
mean, and
you know.
I can't really say too much as far as like his intentions behind that. But I think what the problem we see with society, with politics as a whole, is that too many people get into their set ways and they get into politics and they turn it into a career, and they lose that connection with the everyday citizen. They have their buddies they rely on, they talk to their buddies all the time, and it becomes about influence, and it becomes about access to a lot of the political class and what they can do for their buddies. um, to me, that's one of the frustrating things, because they lose sight on who's really paying for all of this. The
Yeah.
people, and it's the
It's us.
citizens that are paying for everything, every
We
single one of us.
pay to subsidize Micron's big build and Meta's big build, and all these big companies come in, and we give them all sorts of tax breaks. We give them all sorts of incentives to come in here because they're
Hmm.
supposed to hire so many people. But then they do what Chobani does, and they don't hire locals; they import them. They hire some locals. Let's be fair. I don't want to be
Hmm.
I don't want to be ridiculous, but they import a lot of their employees that come in, and then they claim that they're going to hire all of these people and to come in and help build like Lava Ridge. Oh, we're going to bring all these people, hire all the locals. Well, if you don't have enough locals that already know what they're doing there, where are they going to come from? Well, we're going to bring them in. Okay, well, where are you going to
Hmm.
put them? How are they going to travel around? Where our infrastructure in the Magic Valley is already burdened. You're gonna make traffic worse. What are you going to do for that? What are
Hmm.
you going to do to help all of this? And at the end of the day, it lands on us to build the infrastructure to make sure that they can build their project where they bring somebody in from out of state, and the only people that benefited are out of state. And
Yeah,
and
I mean, well, and that brings up the whole Ariba exemption. Basically, what it is if a business invests $1 billion in the state of Idaho for infrastructure, or not for infrastructure, but for their industry, then they only have to go and pay taxes on $400 million of that $1 billion that they bring into the or into the state. You don't see that with the small business owners. I mean, people invest a lot of money, like $100,000 into a small local business. You don't see them having to only pay taxes on $40,000 of that $100,000. So we create these carve outs for the huge corporate interests, but we don't do anything for the entrepreneurs or the small business owners. And to me, that's extremely frustrating.
well, it's not frustrating. I would almost I mean it's not criminal, but sure should be. It just to use tax. Well, first of all, I don't know why we subsidize anything anyway. I mean, I
Mm.
understand. I understand the justification, how they justify it in their own mind, and how they justify it to the public that we should do this. But at the end of the day, that's not a level playing field. That's not equal application of the law. When I have to pay 100% of my taxes, but they get a break, just because they're bigger and they're bringing money into the economy. And here's the probably the biggest frustration. Every time I see something like this, I see this in Idaho. I see the exact same connection. And I added, you sent me some slides, but I did a little bit of digging. And so you take a look at Meta. They're building this enormous data center. And interestingly enough, Meta sits on the board of IACI, the Interstate Association of Commerce or Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry. And they're the largest lobby group, the oldest and the most powerful, so powerful. I talked about this Wednesday that they have an office at our Capitol. And lo and behold, I go digging a little bit. Oh, massive, massive company that somehow got a bunch of government subsidies and tax breaks to come in, and they're going to overload our power grid. So we need to do things to help with that. They sit on the board of IACI. Micron, 15 billion expansion, taxpayer benefits. We're gonna need more power, but yet they sit on IACI. You look at Idaho Power Company, who we're talking about right now. They sit on the board of IACI. So you don't think that Meta and this Micron, you don't think that they're chit-chatting with the guys over here at Idaho Power as they're doing all of this? And then LS Power, who wants to build these Lava Ridge wind farms. Oh, look, they also sit on the board of IACI. I am up to here with IACI's influence in Idaho. It feels corrupt. It feels dirty. And they have so much power. I think I heard a while back that 65, and I haven't researched this, so it's just something that I've heard. I need to dig in a little bit further. But I think I heard at one point that 65% of the legislator in Idaho had money behind them from IACI.
Well, I can tell you that IACI is never going to support me. That's for sure. And that's because I stand behind the citizens. That's really where the power is. The power is with the people. These people do have a lot of money. They do have a lot of influence. Seems like every major corporation that's in the state of Idaho or operating around the state of Idaho has an influence with IACI. And the thing that frustrates me is you go and you look at the Idaho Launch Grant Program and the Workforce Development Council, and who sits on the board for the Workforce Development Council and determines what jobs are essential. And basically, it's to me, it's another free handout. And I get so frustrated with the Idaho Launch Grant Program because there's got to be a better way to go and do this.
Yeah, let's
use. And I think that
go ahead.
I think the answer lies with the free market approach, and I think it lies with the business owners, where if you have a stake in it as a business owner, where you're basically going and having a contractual agreement with somebody that's going to college that wants to learn a trade or skill, you pay for that degree, depending on whatever metrics within that contract you have, then you're able to retain that person, keep them in the state, and provide a unique skill and a unique trade. But it's just easier for these people to come to the government and say, hey, government, we want this, we need this, and get the taxpayers to pay for it, than to do it on their own merits.
Yeah. And these are big business. These people make millions and billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And so they could easily have their own grants to send people to college to work. And then, hey, I'll send you to college to learn the trade. Then you come work for me. But instead, what they do is they use their influence through IACI to get this Idaho launch program going so that the Idaho taxpayer pays to train the people in the school to go to work for the people who are board members of IACI. I mean, it's this big club, and the taxpayer, are not in it. And a lot of these companies are owned and operated out of state. So the money might be made here in the state, but then it goes somewhere else, and then they spend their money elsewhere, and none of it comes back here to benefit us. Even if it is, it's a very small fraction.
Right. As far as that Idaho Launch Grant Program, you look at where the money's going, and it's going to the colleges and universities. They love this program. It's because it's like a free handout to them. And I get frustrated with that because they already have money as it is. I mean, we pay property taxes. Our property taxes subsidize the local college. People don't see this, but I mean, last time I looked at in 2023, I think the College of Southern Idaho got almost $10 million, if not a little bit more than that, from our taxpayer, our property taxes. Yet there's still this other pot of money. And now it's like we've allowed for them to go and increase their tuition rates, which tells me that here in another year or so, they're going to come back to the legislature and say, well, we've increased our tuition. We need more money for launch. Let's increase the cap of launch from $8,000 to like 10,000 or $12,000. And it just pushes another burden on us to go and subsidize it. I served in the military, and part of my service was I earned the post 9/11 GI Bill. You know, that's something that I work towards. It's something I sacrifice for. And to all of a sudden, it's like, well, here's some free money. Oh, and a slap in the face for your service. And the other day I was talking with the gentleman with the Idaho National Guard, and they're frustrated because they're not seeing the retention that they need to have. They're not able to recruit people they have. And part of that, I think, is because the Idaho Launch program has really de-incentivized people from joining because it's almost more beneficial to get that free money than it is to earn it by joining the military.
Yeah, and you know that's just another frustration. It,
Excuse me.
we give we send you out there to defend us and to protect us, and then you come back, and I've got a good friend that I'm not going to mention his name because I think he'd probably want to stay anonymous on this, but he can't get he makes too much money now that he's out of the military, so he doesn't get to go get the full benefits of the medical that he needs. And that to me again is just criminal. We send you out there to fight, and those benefits, as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't matter how much he makes. If he makes a lot, if he makes a little, that VA is there for all of you. And to make you jump through hoops to get substandard service, it's just maddening, or no service at all. And he struggles to make his ends meet because the bills go up and up and up and up and up, and the requirements don't change along with that. So now he's paying more money to survive, but the requirement level is all the way over down here. And so now it's harder for him to live, but he can't go get the benefits that he needs to go get the medical assistance that he needs. And it's just this big vicious cycle. We don't treat our veterans the way that we should. The people that are running across our border that did nothing for their benefits get more assistance than he does. And that is just wrong. And I don't care what anybody thinks of me for saying it, but somebody that went and served our country certainly deserves the benefits more than somebody who's sitting on their butt at home claiming that they have a disability that they don't really have, and they're just sucking up the benefits out of the welfare system. And it just, I watch this kind of thing happen over and over again. I've got a cousin that served 3 tours in Iraq. He had a horrible experience there and came back and had just all sorts of mental problems as a result of that. And then of course they got to jump through hoops to get the assistance that they need. And he still suffers. And what happened to him was terrible. But we throw you to the curb, but yet somebody can just travel 5 feet across that border and we're welcoming them with open hands. And here's all the medical assistance you need. And then they overload our health system. So we can't afford our medical.
Well, I think that a lot of that falls back on my generation of veterans too, because it's our responsibility as veterans to take care of one another. I've had several battle buddies that I've served with over the years that have reached out to me and contacted me about some of their stuff that's going on with them and some of their ills, some of their issues. And, once you start talking to them, you start talking about what you've been going through personally. Um, it encourages them. Like, I'll say from personal experience, I fell into that deep pit that a lot of veterans fall into where, you kind of isolate yourself. And with that, it's a hard pit to get out of. But, I had a good friend of mine that I served with in Iraq, and I saw how successful he was becoming, where he picked himself up, he dusted himself off, and he cleaned up his life. And to me, that was encouraging. And now it's like I have veterans I've served with, buddies I've served with that are reaching out to me, and they see what I've been able to accomplish. And now it's like I've been able to have a little bit of an influence on their lives and try lifting them up out of that pit of despair they've been in. But a lot of this falls back on us. And, as far as the Veterans Administration, it's a great organization. There's individuals in it that are great individuals that have helped out with a lot of veterans, but it is a government bureaucracy. And with government bureaucracies, there's always that those hurdles to get over to get the treatment that you really need. And a lot of times it becomes, who's the most vocal person. And a lot of veterans, myself included, are reluctant to reach out and show any sort of sign of weakness. We're reluctant to go and ask for help. But there are some spectacular resources out there. I mean, the veteran service officers here in the Magic Valley are phenomenal. They are some of the best people, and they have helped me out with several veterans that don't even live in the state of Idaho, but they're always willing to be there to help veterans through a lot of that process and navigate that process. It's just, hardest step is that first step
Yeah.
in getting the help that you need. And, but it's encouraging to go and have people contact me that are struggling and being able to direct them towards the veteran service offices here and like, hey, these guys need some help. How can you help them out?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we are coming up on Memorial Day, where we remember those who fell, and you weren't one of those who fell, but you were one of those who served, and we all thank you for that, and all of our veterans out there, and we remember the families of those that had the loss of a loved one because they were willing to go out there and die for our country, and that's a big deal. I mean, you put on your shirt and you go to work today, and you're probably coming home in one piece. But you put on your shirt to go to work in the military, and you don't know when you're going to get that call to go to war. And it's not just those who die over there. Some of them die mentally, and they come back a
Well,
completely different person. And that's something that needs to be addressed. And some of them they die physically. They come home and they can't go back to the trade because they lost a leg, they lost an arm, and that needs to be addressed and taken care of. I guess I'm probably a little bit sensitive to this because a couple days ago I got the Wednesday, as I was doing a show, and I'm talking about how corrupt I believe St. Luke's was and is with some of the things that they've done. Of course, another IACI company. Go back and watch that video Wednesday. But the irony, as I hang up the telephone and I get a telephone call that my uncle, who suffers from the effects of Agent Orange to this day, he was in Nam and he came back. He had cancer in his throat, and he's just fought. He has a collapsed lung, and he was sitting over at St. Luke's, and got over there, and he looks frail. He just absolutely looks terrible and it's the effects of what we sent them over. And I watch these people just have to jump through hoops when our taxpayers are subsidizing these big billion-dollar corporations that have plenty of money to do this on their own. They don't need our taxpayer dollars, but yet these people that went and fought and suffered their entire life, when they come back, these people have to fight to get assistance. That's crap.
Well, and you'll find out that the most needy, I think, among our people are the ones that are most reluctant to reach out and ask for help in the first place. I've seen it time and time again. You see it with a lot of service members too, where it's like, they're affected by PTSD. They're affected by degenerate bone disease or these other elements that are going on, and they refuse to reach out and ask for assistance. And it's kind of tough watching these people struggle because they're like, well, somebody else deserves that. But then you have the people that shouldn't be taking advantage of these programs, that are taking advantage of these programs, that are basically abusing it and taking it away from other people. It's this last legislative session. We saw this with the Medicaid expansion, where the Medicaid expansion was designed for the working poor. For those individuals that kind of fell through the gaps. They didn't qualify for the Medicaid program, but they didn't quite qualify for the exchange. And a lot of able-bodied individuals were taking advantage of that program when they shouldn't have been. And so, we tried to go and rein that in with House Bill 138, which put up some side rails that basically said, hey, you need to be working at least 20 hours, a month to be able to qualify for this program, simply because we don't want to go and we want to protect the most vulnerable, and we want the most vulnerable to be able to have access to these programs, but they're taken away from it, and it's costing the taxpayers substantial amounts of money.
And I'm looking at some of the comments that are coming in. I finally got this to where we can kind of see all the comments aggregated in one place,
Mhm.
and it kind of back on the point of what you said with the out of state interests that are driving up the power bills. Rhonda said our average power bill has doubled in the last 5 years. Is this interstate power communism? And I mean, it's essentially that's exactly what it is. We're all paying for them uh, to increase their infrastructure so that they can get their needs down in California and Oregon, and yet we pay for it. Lyle Johnstone popped in here and he said we put veterans on a sliding scale, but we don't do that with corporate welfare. $1 billion corporations will get more welfare than the local companies.
Mhm.
And it's just some great comments. And Glenita, Senator Glenita, hi Senator, she popped in there and said that's because they have a heart of service and sacrifice. Talking about our veterans, and that's exactly right. So, um,
Mhm.
so kind of coming back around, I know I get back off the rabbit trail. What could be done about this? Yeah, I know that from a legislative standpoint, there's some things you can do, some things you can't do. But is there anything we can do about this to stop Idaho from subsidizing California and Oregon and these other states that have all of their rainbow ideas that don't have a pot of gold at the end for
Mhm.
anybody but the rich?
Yeah, I mean, I wish the answer was really simple. I've worked on several different drafts for different pieces of legislation, and it keeps on coming up to, are we allowed to interfere with the market? And that it falls under what they call the dormant clause. And the big answer is we're not allowed to go and interfere with the free market approach. However, I have a different take on that, and I think that with the carbon neutral legislation that these I guess coastal states have adopted, I think that they've interfered with the free market approach to things. And I think that's where one of the focuses should be as to how we should start looking at this and see, is there a way we can address this where they've been interfering with the market and not allowing us to freely trade on that market unless we have carbon neutral energy we're selling to them.
Well, that's a
And
good point.
so that's just one way to kind of look at it. But myself and other legislators have been racking our brains as how can we go and address this. I was a co-sponsor for House Bill 395 this last year. And what that bill basically says is that if there's an industry that comes in the state of Idaho that requires more than 10 megawatts of electricity, it's up to that industry to pay for all that infrastructure needed to support their industry. This would save the ratepayers from having to go and subsidize that infrastructure. So, I mean, you look at it, and that's the grandma at her house that's subsidizing these
Hmm.
things. It's the farmer who's subsidizing these things. All of us have seen a tremendous increase in cyber power bills, and the farmers have seen a huge increase in their power bill as well. And we have aging infrastructure. And really, if we're going to be spending money on infrastructure, we should be going and revitalizing some of that aging infrastructure because a lot of these farmers, they use three-phase pumps for their operations. Well, a lot of the electricity that's out there has been aged, and it's only suitable for two-phase systems. And it costs a lot of money to get in compliance to get into these three-phase systems. And so I think that that's where our focus should be as far as the infrastructure goes, taking care of each other as a state, not necessarily subsidizing these big industries.
Well, and I'm going to bring up 2 points that one from you and one from Nicholas. Is it Mausel? I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, but just popped up a comment that made me think about this. It's not really a free market if we, the people, don't have anywhere else to go. We're stuck with Idaho
Mhm.
Power. We don't have anybody else to buy from. And they say, well, if you put up solar panels, then we can make Idaho Power pay back. And so there were subsidies that were there to put solar panels on your house. Now these big solar fields, they're still getting 100% of their money, but yet the people who put them on their homes, he said Idaho Power screwed over those who invested in solar panels because now they're
Mhm.
trying to reduce the amount of money that they're paying back to those who put them in. So they're not getting, you don't, if you go buy solar panels and put them on your house and there's no subsidy, you're probably not going to get your investment back because of so many factors that affect that. I have a technology company. I've looked into this. It's just not feasible. But with the subsidy, it made it feasible. So a lot of these door-to-door companies ran around knocking on doors. Here, put these solar panels up, and Idaho Power is going to pay you so much back. Well, now they're getting screwed because the amount they're getting back is less, and it's not going to pencil out.
Yeah, I mean, the Public Utilities Commission capped the amount of energy production to 25 kilowatt hour systems. And so if you go and you buy a 65 kilowatt hour system, you're just wasting your money at that point because they are capped. Meanwhile, the commercial solar fields, they have a different rate system that they use. And so they don't have that cap like a residential property does. And it's really frustrating. The other aspect of this, too, is that people that do have these types of systems, you think, well, I can get off the grid. No, you can't. There's laws in place that prevent people from being able to go and have their own little self-sustaining system to power what their energy needs are. They have to be tied to the grid.
And that again, that's just criminal. It's criminal. How is this a free society? This is a question that I ask all the time.
Mhm.
What our forefathers envisioned was a truly free society. If you don't want to deal with anybody, go out in the middle of nowhere, pop up a house, live free. Just don't do something that infringes on somebody else's ability to go do the same. So that's what the government was there for, protect you from me and me from you and pretty much nothing else.
Mhm.
But now you can't do that. You are tied to the government no matter what you do. You're tied to Idaho Power in Idaho. No matter what you do, you can't get away from those guys. And again, this just comes back to big business influence. It comes back to corporation or groups like IACI. They all
Mhm.
get together and say, we're going to run this state the way we want to see fit. And it benefits them and it screws everybody else. And we got to do something about this in our legislature. Something has to be done. You cannot have that much power. You cannot. I can't walk in and have an office down at the Capitol to sit there and be in everybody's ear all day long. There's not enough room for all of us. So they go get a lobbyist, and I can't afford a lobbyist. Who's lobbying for me?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm working on some swag for my campaign. And I was thinking one of the funnier things I could do is probably go and say that I couldn't afford my own politician, so I voted for David Leavitt. Um, I just think that that's one of the problems is it comes down to access, and a lot of people don't have access to their legislators like they should, and it's frustrating. I mean, that's part of the reason why I even got involved in politics in the first place. Is it seemed like that every every complaint that I had was just falling on deaf ears. But it became more about the prominent influence that was there at the Capitol than it was about the citizens inside the community. It became about who has the most influence, who has the most money, who's going to go and support this person's campaign, and fund their campaign versus they're going to listen to my grievances as a citizen. And so it all comes back to the people for me. And I don't exactly have a very good relationship with the majority of the lobbyists in that building. And as far as like their little office goes, it's actually a shared office that is leased by the lobbyists. And it's in a vault that's on the Senate wing of the garden level of the Capitol building. And I've always joked around that vaults are designed to keep something of value with intrinsic value. And frankly, I don't think our lobbyists really provide that sort of value to the state. It's all about themselves.
Yeah, I don't see any lobbyists that are down there that say, we the people. That's who I'm here to support. That's who I'm here to lobby for. I see a lot of lobbyists that are there to support the big business. And that, in a very real sense, IACI bought themselves a governor. First, they bought themselves a senator by putting the money behind one of their own. Brad Little
Mhm.
was IACI for 20 years. He was IACI. He served on the board of IACI, and then they put their money and their power behind him. He gets in there into our legislature, and then they put their money and power behind him, and they endorse him for governor, and then they make sure to surround him with people. What does he do? He brings up somebody from IACI, people from IACI to serve with him, and so this is just one big club. and we're
Hmm.
not in it. And it's we got to end the ability for these rich people to come in, these big corporations, especially out of state interest, to come in and buy a politician. That's got to end
Hmm.
someday. That's got to end somewhere. Their their vote, the owner of that company should not have more vote power than me. But they
Yeah.
do. But they do. And that's got to stop. And if we don't put an end to that, our nation is going to go the way of every single nation that's ever been under tyranny. We're going to crumble to the ground, and it's just going to be done.
Hmm.
And Idaho is too great to be under the power of these people.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes down to it, it's like, what is the purpose of government? Our purpose isn't to manipulate markets. Our purpose isn't to be involved in markets. Our purpose is to protect the rights and liberties of the citizens. That is the purpose of government. But too often, government gets involved in charity cases, whether that's with subsidies for industries and corporations, or welfare programs. These things that's why we have a free market, is to go and deal with these types of things. And the free market includes these nonprofits make some of the best charities, especially the local ones. And for me, the philosophy is the more money I can keep in people's pockets rather than government, it means that they can go out and bless other people with that money. It means they can take that money to a charity of their choosing and give that money to a charity, knowing that that charity represents their interests, and that money goes towards a deed and a service that that individual deems to be important and how they want to see their money. Too often I hear terms like, oh, we need to invest taxpayer money. When did it become the proper role of government to invest other people's money?
Amen.
I'm sorry, but that's why you have brokers. That's why you have these individuals that you work for with the money markets to invest your money. It's not the government's proper role. Ultimately comes down to the government's proper role is to protect your liberties and freedom. And into that, there's no guarantee that that everybody is going to have happiness. Everybody wants that. The only guarantee is the pursuit of happiness. And oftentimes government gets in the way and sets up these roadblocks to prevent people from really pursuing their happiness or even their full potential, because they feel like they can't participate in the market because there's too many roadblocks, too many hurdles jumped through, too much red tape.
Well, let me ask you, in that form of happiness, to the person listening to this, are you happy that your power bills have gone up to subsidize California and big businesses that come in, and these huge things like Meta putting in this big server farm? Are you happy? Are you happy that they're digging into our water? Chobani's another one that uses an enormous amount of water, and they use an enormous amount of power. And another IACI member, another person on the board of IACI. They're just, every single time you look at somebody who puts more weight on your shoulders so that they can get rich with very
Well,
little, if any, benefit to you.
and here's the problem too: is you start looking at like how this is doled out as far as how they charge people, and it seems like the more that you use, the more that you're rewarded, where you're paying a lower price. And so, with me, it's like, hey, I'm using 3,000 gallons a month, just figuratively throwing that out there. But, I'm paying a higher price unless, oh, guess what? I go and I use 6,000 gallons of water. I still pay the same price on that 3,000 gallons. But since I'm using 6,000 gallons of water now, I'm paying less for that additional 3,000 gallons. To me, that doesn't make any sense.
You drive down
If it,
to Thousand Springs, down in Hagerman Valley. I remember driving through that area, and it truly, I understood why they gave it that. There may not have been 1,000 springs, but it sure looked like it when you drove through there. Beautiful springs kicking out from our aquifer on the north side over there, and you drive through there now, and there's a few springs. A few pretty springs, the ones that are there, but it's just like they should call it the thousand trickle, and it's because of again other groups that are within IACI that have a lot of power around here. I'm going to tick off some of my friends, but that are in the dairy market. but it's because those dairies require an enormous amount of water to operate. And so Jerome County and these counties over there just allowed them just willy-nilly to come in and just start pumping water out of the aquifer, more and more and more and more water out of that aquifer, and the farmers pumping more and more for their pivots. And yeah, we need water to grow crops. Okay, I get that. But what we don't need is a big factory over here. Chobani can build it somewhere else. But then we have Sean Berriger, when he was on our mayor over there, just wooing them in, and we'll do this for you, and we'll do this for you, and we'll do this for you. And who pays the price? We do. We do. And it's also that they can get so the politician can get the support and the money, because they know that they need that money to get elected. And it's time that the people rise up and put an end to this. And how you do it is you get involved. That's the first way. David, I don't mean this in any sense, because I'm saying what I say about you now points back at me. David's nobody special. He's another citizen just like you and I. And he wasn't trained to do this. He wasn't trained to speak. I remember when you first got started as to run for office, you were terrified.
Yeah, well, I mean, even before that, it's like I was absolutely terrified to do any of this stuff, because I was just like, there's better people out there to do it. But the reality is that, when it comes to standing up and doing the right thing is never going to be easy for anybody. There's always going to be those roadblocks, those hiccups, and you're going to be scared out of your wit to get up and do anything. But, it comes down to pushing past all that, because so many people out there have so much potential. They're holding themselves back.
Yeah.
They choose not to get involved because they're too afraid. Use that fear, use your passion, get involved, because we need good men to stand up. And I think men, for instance, have been asleep at the wheel for a long time.
Oh boy.
And, we really need to go and stand up. We need to start taking charge again, because men, we're designed to be protectors and providers. We have dropped the ball on this. We've allowed, in my opinion, we've allowed a lot of women to go and pick up that mantle. But the reality is, women, they have an even more important job than us. Their job is to rear the family. Their job is to go and take care of the kids and teach the kids. Their job is more important than ours, but we've allowed them to take over our responsibility as men. And we need to change that. Men need to stand up.
I would go so far as to say that it's not that we've allowed them, it's that we haven't done our job. And because we're not doing our job, there are great women that see that need and that void, and are like, these guys aren't doing what they need to be doing, and so they've had to rise up. And I give a lot of credit to the women that have done that and rose up and filled those roles. But you're absolutely right. If we had more moms that were at home that were teaching the kids, teaching the men how to go out and be men. If the men were going to work with their dad like they used to, learning how to be men, and if men were rising up and doing and taking the role that they're supposed to, then it would allow the women to be at home and to take care of that.
There's this fun saying that says, behind every great man is a woman. And so I'll pose this question to you, Shane. Why does the woman stand behind the man?
I could come up with a lot of answers, but I feel I'm being baited here. Throw it out there.
It's to put her foot up his rear end and keep him on track. That's, and there's so much truth behind that.
There's a lot of truth.
If boys do not have that influence in their life to go and have that woman to put her foot up his rear end, they stay boys. They never become men.
Hey, as a man, Rhonda's had to put her foot up mine several times. And I'm grateful that she's willing to do it, and that she's there to do that, because we all need that. They inherently, women are more nurturing. If it weren't for for women, there's probably a lot of guys out there that would have held the baby's head under the water. And I say that jokingly, but I mean, but in retrospect, they have that nurturing spirit, and they're able to do that. And they're able to see when men, we're protectors and we're workers, and we're supposed to be strong. I think that kind of a nurturing part of us was created a little bit lower than women so that we can go to war,
Mhm.
so that we can
Mhm.
go fight and we can protect. And on the other hand, though, if we were the ones just by ourselves raising kids, and there's a lot of single dads that have been able to do it, but and I commend those that have risen to the occasion, and I've seen a lot of great kids come out of single men. But the as a general rule of thumb, when there's a man and a woman both in the home raising the kids come out better balanced. They have an emotional balance where they have the nurture, but they also have the strength. And we're not seeing that for this very reason. And it's because we need men rise up, step into
Mhm.
that role, quit being sissies. And I think that's a lot why our government and these big businesses and these big globalists, they want this LGBTQ pride thing to function. That's why they're pouring the. If it doesn't make sense, there's a dollar involved. They pour the money
Mhm.
into it so that they can sissify men.
Yeah. And, I will tell you this, and that is that without the phenomenal women in my life, I would not be here today. It's like my sisters, I spent a lot of time talking to my older sister about a lot of this stuff. My girlfriend, she's helped me out tremendously with getting through a lot of the stuff that I've gone through. I mean, there's a lot of frustrations and just having that person to be able to vent to and bounce ideas off of. There's a lot of strong women in out there that have influenced my life, and I'm indebted to them for that influence and for the push that they've given me.
Yeah. Oh, amen. Amen. And hey, without moms, none of us would be here. But
Right.
but uh, but there is. I am not one of those who wants to go back and take away a woman's right to go to work. She should have every single
Mhm.
right that we have. Women ought to have to go to work and to be prosperous and to rise up through the chain. That's not where I'm coming from. What I'm saying is they should also be able to choose to stay home.
Mhm.
And we have created a society where it takes two people going to work often to be able to survive. And that was the big lie that was told all the way back when the feminist movement, it was like businesses and the government said, oh yeah, if we can get them all working, we can make a lot of money. and
Mhm.
uh, and and at first they said we don't have to pay them as much. Wink, wink. And so now they're all dependent, and now it's the school system, it's the government raising your children
Mhm.
and teaching them their values. And hey, by the way, folks, it's politicians that determine what your public schools are or are not going to teach your children. And if you don't think that they're teaching your children not to understand the power that they have as a citizen of the United States, if you go back and you take a look at what they're teaching your kids in school, they're not teaching the Constitution that I was taught. They're not teaching the Constitution that's in the books, and they're not teaching
Mhm.
them that they have the power to rise up against their government. And by the way, the government doesn't rule them; that they rule their government. They're not
Mhm.
teaching them that. They're teaching them to be obedient little bootlicking citizens.
Well, and here's the reality too. Businesses, this is my opinion, but businesses have privileges. The individual has rights. And we need to get back to that premise. Too often we have the industries and the businesses that run everything, but they shouldn't be. It should be the citizens. And it's discouraging when you see where the citizens aren't getting involved like they should be. And I guess, I'd be calling on citizens. It's like, it's time to rise up. It's time to get involved. It's time to be engaged. It's part of your civic duty as an American. It's part of your civic duty as an Idahoan.
And and I should be talking about business. I'm not against big businesses either. If you want to go out and start a
Mhm.
business, you should have every equal right to thrive that I have. But it shouldn't be my money going to help you build your business. I should be able to keep it so that I can build my business.
Mhm.
And it should be an equal playing field that the small guy that wants to build a big business and come up, it's like the big club up there has decided they don't want any of us competing with them.
Mhm.
And so they work hard to get all the subsidies. My tax dollars should stay in my pocket so that I have the same opportunities to go out and thrive. It shouldn't be helping you build
Yep.
your business. But yet they get the lobbyists, they get the power, they get the ability to put their politicians over there. But it's only at the end of the day, and this is the sad thing, at the end of the day, it's our fault. It's our
Mhm.
fault for not being aware. It's our fault for not paying attention. It's our fault for not voting. It's our fault for not screaming at our legislators when they vote for this stupid garbage and allow it to happen. And we, the citizen, needs to rise up and take our power back from them. And we have it. If you think we
Well,
don't have the power, then you're part of the problem. We have it. It's that thought. It's that stinking thinking that keeps us from becoming, getting more involved. We need to be much, much, much more involved than we are in our government and what they're doing. And we need to be screaming at them. Stop this nonsense.
I mean, our freedoms and our liberties is really like an athlete. If that athlete doesn't exercise, if that athlete doesn't work out, doesn't do the training they need to do, they're not going to be able to go out and run a marathon. But if we start to exercise, you know, practice discipline and prepare ourselves, then we'll be able to be a formidable opponent when it comes to running a marathon. And like I said, this is the same with our freedoms. We've forgotten how to exercise them, and we really need to start exercising them so we can become formidable.
And this, coming up into Memorial Day weekend, we remember how important those freedoms are. They're so important
Mhm.
that many of our grandparents are not with us anymore because they died, they bled and they died, they fought so that we could
Mhm.
have the freedoms that we sit on our hands and don't exercise. That
Mhm.
many of our brothers, our sisters, our aunts, our uncles died. They died so that we can have those freedoms. And yeah, some of them died for wars that we should have never been in. Okay, but that comes right back around to us. They died so that we have the right to influence our government and to control our government to keep them from going into those wars that we let them get into, that they
Mhm.
should have never gotten into. And we have people coming back with mental illness because we allowed our government to do this. And we didn't stand up and scream. We didn't stand up and fight. And people look at someone standing on the street corner with a sign uh, as an extremist. No, they're a citizen that's out there. Actually, even
Mhm.
even the ones on the other side, at least I got to give them the respect for standing out there. Well, unless they're being paid to, by George
Right.
Soros and some of them. But I don't have any respect for that. But to stand out there and to sacrifice time with your family, time from watching Days of Our Lives on TV, if that's even still airing, I don't know. Mom used to watch that. I
Mhm.
don't pay attention. But to sit at home and watch Netflix, so sacrifice a little bit of your time that you would be staring at your phone to go stand out there and hold a sign that says, hey,
Mhm.
to raise some awareness with the rest of the people. I have a lot of respect for that, no matter which
Oh,
side you're on, because at least you're involved.
right. Well, and I would say with Memorial Day coming up on Monday that if you do have the time, I would hope that you would volunteer your time and take the time to go out to some of the veteran cemeteries throughout the state and go out there and support um, the speakers and the engagement and really remember those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And I'm frustrated with my generation of veterans, and I'm guilty of this too, where we should be more engaged with our local veterans organizations, whether that's the VFW, the American Legion, the Vietnam generation. They are reaching that point where there's not as many of them. And really, my generation needs to step up to the mantle and start taking over these organizations and provide them the same reverence and respect that they have provided to a lot of people who have served and sacrificed for this country.
Um, Dave, you were willing to go out there and do that. And again, we're thankful for men like you and the women that serve. Without them, we truly wouldn't have the freedoms that we still have. We've given up a lot of them. We can get them back. We can get them back. But you went out there and served your country in the military, and now you come back and you're serving your country in the legislature. And that is a true servant's heart. That's somebody who is willing to fight for their country on whatever front it might be. And those that didn't go into the military when you were younger and wish that you had done more to serve your country, you still can. You can serve it in the
Mhm.
legislature. You can serve it. You can serve through the different like Magic Valley Liberty Alliance and Idaho Freedom Foundation and all of these wonderful foundations around the state. You can get involved in them, and you can serve that
Mhm.
way. But if you don't find a way to serve, you're just going to be a slave.
Well, and I think that, one of the things that helped me out of my little slump that I was in for a while was the simple fact that I wasn't serving people. Well, I guess the reason why I wasn't there in the first place is because I wasn't serving other people. I was looking out for my own selfish stuff. And I was the victim of everything. Everything was everybody else's problems. But the reality is, what brings you out of that, and it's tough to do, is go serve your fellow man. Provide something of fulfillment that you can help somebody else out with. Because providing that fulfillment to somebody else really lifts your soul and makes you into a better individual. And so if you do have the time and you are feeling down, go find somebody and help serve them. Provide some sort of service for them. Even just talking to people will lift you up.
And you just reminded me of one of my favorite sayings that it's a biblical principle. If you want something, give it away. If you're feeling unloved
Mhm,
and you need love, maybe you just haven't been giving any love.
mhm,
If you feel like you need money, it's a strange principle, but give some away.
yeah.
Maybe it's just that you haven't been charitable. People notice those things, and they want to do business with charitable people. They
Mhm,
want to hang out with charitable people who are willing to give of their money, their time, their talents. That's who they want to be around. Maybe it is that you're just not giving away what it is that you feel like you need the most. And it's amazing how that works. I don't truly understand it, but I believe God set this world up to operate that way on
mhm.
purpose, so that we won't just sit back and be misers and be selfish and be greedy. And it works. So David, you've given and you've given and you're giving and you're continuing to give. And thank you. Thank you for your service, both abroad and at home. And thank you for what you've and what you're continuing to do in our legislator and people. Get to know David. If you're in the Magic Valley,
Yeah.
he's here, but he's affecting. Oh, I did before we get completely done. I want to bring up just one funny thing that happened. Yeah, I'm going to let you tell the story, but some of the goofy folks over our legislator decided to walk out on a the discussion of a bill, and you were one who stood up and threatened to have the to enact a procedure that would have had them drugged back to the. Go ahead and tell the story. You know where I'm going.
Yeah. So we had a really crummy bill that had come up that I'm trying to think of it. I think it involved the lobbyists or something. Or yeah, it was just a really bad bill. And what had happened is that the speaker had gotten up and a bunch of the chairmen had got up and left the chambers for whatever reason. They had their reasons, I guess. And we were watching this happen. Kent Marmon, love him to death. It's like we kind of discussed this that something like this happens, that he was going to make the call to what they call the house, which is basically where they lock all the chamber doors and then they send out law enforcement to go and collect the individual who left the uh, chambers to vote on legislation. Well, Kent got up and kind of dropped the ball on this, where he made a mistake and wanted to go and recess, and so I jumped up and I did a call the House, which basically all of a sudden it's like a gavel comes down, and the temp or the speaker at the time was Representative Jason Monks. And so we all went and met in his office and kind of talked about this. But call the House hadn't been done in several years. And it would have been one of those scenarios where we would have been there probably until about midnight that night trying to track people down to get them to show up and vote. But it was just one of those things that had never been done, I think, with a freshman. And it was just kind of a surprise for everybody. But it was rather fun because it caused a lot of chaos around the Capitol. People were scrambling to figure out what was going on and what to do. And but it was one of those moments. It was a memorable moment with this last legislative session doing a call to House.
Yeah,
So
I love it. I love it because it's just the games. There's so many games that are going
Mhm.
on, and that's why they give you that ability. That's why they give a legislator the ability to do that call to house. It's when they're just playing stupid games, it gives you the ability to call them to task
Mhm.
and make them come back and go to work and do what they're supposed to do. So that was a bold move, and at the end of the day, you didn't have to follow through with it because it brought them all back in the next morning. They understood how serious you
Mhm.
were. I mean, because if they didn't come back the next morning, I guarantee you would have done it and made them come back. And so,
Yeah, I mean, the following morning, the speaker called us, all the Republicans into a caucus to kind of talk about what happened the day prior, and you know, it was just kind of interesting because I don't know, there's that excitement and that adrenaline rush where all of a sudden everybody's like running to the bathroom because they're like, "Crap, we can't leave the chamber, so you better pee now." Um,
so David, you're bold and you're strong and you have a definitely have a good moral compass. And I think that's the most important thing. And we're so glad that you're in there.
Mhm.
And thank you for all that you're doing. We're at an hour and 15 minutes here. So I guess it's time to adjourn this meeting so that you can get
All
back to
right, well,
doing the things that you do. But thank you so much.
hey,
Anything else
thank
you
you,
want to say
Shane,
as a
and
last I'm going to give you the last word.
all right. Yeah, if you want to go and find out anything about me, it's like you can go to Levitt, the number 4idaho.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. And I just wanted to thank all the people, the wonderful, wonderful individuals I've worked with. You know, we've been able to go and do a lot. And I can tell you that having this group of individuals to work with, it's been so encouraging. And it's great to have that accountability and that ability to work with these people where we're sitting there working every morning, meeting, talking about legislation, talking about what's coming up in the day's agenda, and being able to have that check on each other. And like I said, though, these people are absolutely phenomenal. And we know that we have challenged the status quo. And they're not happy about it. And I know that they're going to be coming after us, and we're going to need the citizens' support. We're going to need the people's support. And that's one of the toughest thing about being in this position is asking for people to sacrifice to help us do what's right and be able to go and represent the citizens, because that's what it comes down to, is being there for you. Every single one of you are worth it. And I really appreciate your time today, Shane.
Thank you so much, David.